What if the story everyone repeats about that duel is wrong from the start? What if Yoda didn't really lose to Palpatine in the way people casually assume? Go back and watch the fight carefully, without the myth attached to it. Does Yoda collapse in defeat? Does Palpatine overpower him and force him to submit? Or does the environment collapse first? The Senate chamber is literally falling apart. Clone reinforcements are closing in. The Republic itself is already gone by the time the duel ends. Yoda doesn't fall because he is weaker. He retreats because the galaxy around him has already chosen a side. So here is the uncomfortable question. If the duel was truly even, if Yoda was not outmatched, then what actually stopped him from finishing it? We see Yoda deflect Force lightning with his hands. We see him absorb it, redirect it, survive it. Very few Force users ever demonstrate that level of control. And yet, people act like Palpatine was untouchable. Was he? Or was that just the story that survived because Palpatine lived? Fans love to say Yoda was outclassed, but canon shows something different. Yoda is one of the only characters in the saga who treats Force lightning not as a fatal threat, but as something manageable. He doesn't panic. He doesn't flee instantly. He holds. He endures. And in alternate fan interpretations, the moment where Yoda loses his footing is not proof of inferiority. It is proof of timing. 1 second earlier, one different angle, and the story ends right there. So did Yoda lack the ability? Or did he lack the willingness? That's the question people avoid. Because if Yoda could have killed Palpatine but didn't, then his exile stops being a noble sacrifice and starts looking like a catastrophic hesitation. And fans hate that idea because it reframes Yoda not as a tragic loser, but as someone who made a conscious choice that doomed billions. And even if Yoda had struck him down, would anything actually have been fixed? That's the next illusion people cling to. The idea that killing Palpatine automatically restores peace. Look at the state of the Republic at that moment. Emergency powers had already been granted. The Senate had already applauded dictatorship. The Jedi had already been framed as traitors. The machinery of the Empire wasn't something Palpatine switched on after the duel. It was already running. So imagine the headline instead. A Jedi assassinates the Supreme Chancellor. Not a Sith revealed, not a manipulator exposed, just a small green Jedi killing the most powerful political figure in the galaxy. How does that look to systems already terrified of chaos? How does that play to worlds that only know Palpatine as the man who promised order? Would that look like liberation? Or would it look like confirmation that the Jedi were exactly what Palpatine said they were? History Inside Star Wars actually answers this. Even after Palpatine dies decades later, the Empire doesn't magically disappear. It fractures, it mutates, it turns into warlords, remnants, and civil wars that drag on for years. Removing the head does not heal the body. So if killing Palpatine later didn't bring instant peace, why do people assume killing him earlier would have done so? That's where the argument gets dangerous. Because suddenly, Yoda killing Palpatine doesn't look like a clean victory. It looks like a power vacuum. Senators scrambling, loyalists consolidating control, anti-Jedi sentiment exploding, and the Jedi, already decimated, suddenly being blamed for regicide. You can win a duel and lose the galaxy at the same time. And then there is Anakin. This is where everything breaks apart emotionally. Because if Palpatine dies, Anakin almost certainly does too. Canon is very clear on this point. Palpatine is the only reason Anakin survives Mustafar. Without him, there is no Vader. No armor, no rescue, no future. Anakin burns, crawls, and dies alone on that shore. Some fans call that a win. No Darth Vader, no years of terror, no slaughter of Jedi, no Death Star moments, no atrocities. But then ask yourself what else disappears with him. The redemption, the confrontation with Luke, the moment where the Sith finally destroy themselves from within. Without Vader, the original trilogy collapses into a very different story. One where the dark side doesn't fall because of love, but simply because it was cut down early. Is that better? Or is it emptier? Fans argue about this constantly because it cuts to the heart of Star Wars itself. Is the saga about stopping evil at any cost? Or about what it costs to stop it? A galaxy without Vader might be safer, but it also loses one of the most important lessons the story ever told, that even the worst fall can still end in choice. And then comes the public reaction. This is the part people ignore because it's uncomfortable. In many alternate timelines, the moment Yoda kills Palpatine, the holonet explodes. Footage spreads. Narratives harden. The Jedi are no longer victims of a purge. They are perpetrators of assassination. Palpatine spent years painting them as traitors. Killing him could seal that lie forever. Ask yourself honestly, would the average citizen believe Yoda saved them, or that the Jedi finally revealed their true nature? The Jedi Order already struggled with public trust. This act might destroy what little legitimacy they had left. And once legitimacy is gone, peacekeeping turns into occupation. So now the question becomes darker. If Yoda killed Palpatine and the galaxy descended into chaos anyway, would history judge him as a hero, or as the spark that ignited something worse? Liberation or regicide? Balance or breakdown? This is why the debate never ends. And that's the question I'll leave you with. If Yoda had won that duel, would the Force actually be more balanced? Or would the galaxy simply trade one collapse for another? Because sometimes the most terrifying possibility is not that the hero fails. It's that the hero succeeds, and the consequences are worse than anyone imagined. Let's say Yoda does it. Let's say Palpatine is dead on that Senate floor. No escape, no return, no Empire crowned in applause. The Sith mastermind is gone. Now ask the question people rush past too quickly. Does Order 66 stop? Because canon quietly tells us something disturbing. Order 66 was not a live command Palpatine had to whisper every second. It was already embedded. The clone army was not reacting emotionally. It was executing programming. Inhibitor chips implanted at birth, hard-coded responses tied to authority structures that existed independently of Palpatine's heartbeat. So, what happens if the man who gave the order is suddenly gone? Do the clones pause and ask questions? Or do they continue carrying out the last known directive from the system they trust? Many fans argue the second option is more realistic, and canon does not contradict that. Clones followed orders across battlefields without context for years. Why would this moment be different? This is where the heroic assassin fantasy collapses. Killing Palpatine does not instantly shut down the machinery he built. It removes the architect, not the structure. Clones would still be deployed, Jedi would still be identified as targets, and without central clarification, the purge might become messier, more chaotic, and harder to stop. Now, imagine the confusion. Some clone units cease fire, others continue hunting, others turn on each other. Jedi do not suddenly become safe, they become harder to track, harder to protect, and easier to scapegoat. And the public does not see nuance. They see chaos following a Jedi killing the Chancellor. That raises another uncomfortable question. If the purge continues after Palpatine's death, who gets blamed? The dead Sith, or the Jedi who pulled the trigger? From a civilian point of view, cause and effect matter more than secret truths. And that matters, because revolutions are not judged by intention. They are judged by outcome. This pushes the story into a darker place, because now the Jedi are not just survivors. They are crisis managers in a galaxy unraveling faster than before. And the irony is brutal. The very act meant to stop the nightmare might accelerate it. Fans argue about this endlessly. Some insist Order 66 would fail without Palpatine alive. Others argue it would metastasize. But even the debate itself proves the point. The problem was never just one man. It was a system that ran without consent, without transparency, and without accountability. And this is where the galaxy fractures. Because removing Palpatine does not restore the Republic. The Republic was already gone in practice. Emergency powers were normalized. Militarization was accepted. Fear was institutional. Killing the Emperor does not rewind years of political decay. It leaves a vacuum where everyone claims to be restoring order. Look at what happens later in canon. Even after Palpatine dies at Endor, the Empire does not vanish. It splinters. Governors become warlords. Admirals become kings. Ideology outlives the leader. And decades later, something worse rises wearing a new name. That tells us something crucial. Star Wars itself already answered this question once. Killing Palpatine did not end authoritarianism. It delayed it. It reshaped it. It scattered it into forms that were harder to predict and harder to defeat. So why assume an earlier assassination produces a cleaner outcome? In a Palpatine dead timeline, the galaxy likely fractures sooner. Loyalists fight reformists. Systems declare independence. Militias form. Jedi become targets, not because they are Sith enemies, but because they represent uncertainty. And uncertainty is the one thing frightened societies always try to eliminate. This is where fans split hard. Some say chaos is preferable to tyranny. Others say chaos breeds tyranny faster than stability ever could. And neither side is wrong. That is why the argument never ends. Expanded stories even play with this idea. Remnants returning, Sith philosophies surviving their masters, orders resurrecting themselves long after their supposed defeat. All of it points to the same uncomfortable truth. Ideologies do not die when leaders do. They die when the conditions that created them disappear. And that brings us back to Yoda. If Yoda kills Palpatine, what is his plan next? Not the duel, not the escape. The next 10 years. Who rebuilds legitimacy? Who convinces the galaxy the Jedi are not what Palpatine said they were? Who dismantles the clone infrastructure? Who reforms a Senate addicted to power? Because assassination without reconstruction is not victory, it is interruption. This is the question that divides fans more than any lightsaber duel ever could. Was the Jedi mistake mercy, or was it short-sighted violence? Was Palpatine the disease, or the symptom? Some fans argue Yoda should have struck him down, no matter the cost. That evil must be cut out immediately. Others argue that doing so would only prove the Sith right, that the Jedi could not win without becoming executioners, and the most uncomfortable position sits right in the middle. What if Yoda understood that killing Palpatine would not save the Jedi? It would only change the shape of their failure. What if exile was not cowardice, but an admission that the system itself was broken beyond repair? Because if that is true, then Yoda's greatest failure was not losing the duel. It was waiting too long to challenge the structure that made Palpatine inevitable. And that leads to the question fans rarely want to answer. If Yoda had killed Palpatine and the galaxy still burned, would we praise him as a hero? Or would we call him the Jedi, who proved that even victory can be meaningless when it comes too late? That is the real tension behind this story. Not who wins the fight, but whether winning the fight ever mattered at all.